Good afternoon. My name is Julia Billig. I am not an art historian, but I have been studying European history and art for many years. The most interesting period for me is from the 11th to the 17th century. During my travels, I write travel notes, and each of my journeys is thematic. And so I decided that since practically all my trips are connected with history and art, why not post them on this channel? I narrate the main video myself in Russian. For narration in English and German, I use artificial intelligence to spare you from my accent. Please like if you enjoyed it, and I will be happy if you share my stories with your friends. So, let's begin. During this visit to London, for the first of 3 days, I prepared an excursion for myself and called it One Day in London, from Nelson's Lions to Squirrels in Gothic Ruins. There will be 2 more videos about 2 unforgettable days in London. But now, day 1. I am delighted to share my impressions with you. This time, I stayed between Piccadilly and Regent Street, and my path led past Trafalgar Square. It was noisy and cheerful as always. On October 21, 1805, at Cape Trafalgar off the coast of Spain, Admiral Horatio Nelson defeated the combined Franco-Spanish fleet, forever securing the British Isles from Napoleon's invasion. Victory came at a high price. Nelson himself fell in battle, but his triumph changed the course of history. It was in memory of this battle that the square received its name in the 1830s. In the center of the square rises the 52-meter Nelson's Column, a granite monolith crowned with the figure of the admiral, who eternally looks south, toward where he won his last victory. But the true guardians of the square became the 4 bronze lions, frozen at the base of the column. These majestic beasts, created by sculptor Edwin Landseer, appeared here only in 1867, a quarter century after the column itself. Landseer was a master of animal sculpture, but he had one problem. He had never seen a living lion. And this explains one amusing anatomical error. The paws of his lions look more like those of cats. Real lions cannot extend their claws like domestic cats do, but Landseer apparently thought otherwise. Over a century and a half of existence, Trafalgar Square has witnessed countless historical moments. Victory parades and protest rallies, celebrations and revolutions have taken place here. During World War II, the square was bombed by Nazis, but the lions stood firm as symbols of Britain's unconquered spirit. On my way, I encountered the baroque jewel St Mary le Strand, or St Mary on the Way. It truly stands right in the middle of the road. The history of this church is a story of betrayal and patience. In 1549, the greedy Duke of Somerset demolished the original medieval church to build himself a luxurious palace. The parishioners were promised a new temple, but they waited for it for 200 years. Where believers once prayed, Somerset House stood proudly, and on the site of the future church, people celebrated around a huge May pole. Most churches in London were built by Christopher Wren, but this one was built by James Gibbs in 1714. He received the commission for a new church and created a true masterpiece. Poet John Betjeman called it Baroque Heaven, in the heart of the Strand. For many years, St Mary le Strand was a true prisoner, surrounded by streams of cars from all sides, turning the church into an island in the middle of traffic chaos. But recently, this part of the Strand became pedestrian, and the little Baroque beauty can finally breathe freely. Today, when you pass by this architectural wonder, remember, you see not just a church, but a symbol of patience, faith, and the triumph of beauty over the bustle of a big city. After all, even standing on the way, true beauty will always find a way to survive. Further along my route was the Royal Courts of Justice, a brilliant example of Victorian architecture. The most high-profile cases are heard here: celebrity divorces, disputes over millions in inheritance, libel cases against tabloids. In 1866, the government announced a competition. 12 architects participated in the competition for the best project. They proposed various options, including placing the building on the Thames embankment. The winning architect, George Edmund Street, never saw the completion of his masterpiece. He died at age 57 a year before opening, presumably from stress related to working on the project. Construction took more than 8 years, largely due to a stonemason's strike in the middle of construction. Parliament had to hire workers from other European countries to complete the project. The building contains more than 1,000 rooms and 3.5 miles of corridors. Amusingly, the Lord Chief Justice's court was originally located in courtroom number 6, but the judge considered this an unlucky number and asked to renumber it to courtroom number 4, which it remains to this day. Well, he is the Chief Justice. He had the right. The building abounds with magnificent Victorian stained glass windows by masters of the late 19th century. The floors are a true work of art, complex mosaics of marble and stone with geometric patterns in black and white, inlaid brass elements with royal monograms and dates, polished oak with traditional parquet patterns, transitions marked by marble thresholds with engraved mottos. You can visit here by booking a tour in advance. Next to the royal court stands an obelisk on the site of the old western city gates of Temple Bar, which existed here from 1293. After the Great Fire of 1666, Christopher Wren built arched gates that stood until 1878, but they were demolished due to traffic obstruction. This dragon was created in 1880 by sculptor Charles Bell Birch, commissioned by the royal family to crown the pedestal marking the historic site of the City of London gates. In accordance with folkloric beliefs that dragons guard treasures, the Temple Bar dragon serves as totemic protection for the city's treasures. In its claws, it holds the city's shield and banner with the motto Domine dirige nos, Lord, direct us. Bronze statues of Queen Victoria and the Prince of Wales, future Edward VII, by Sir Joseph Boehm, are installed on the sides of the monument. They were chosen because in 1872 they became the last members of the royal family to pass through the old Temple Bar gates on their way to a Thanksgiving service at St Paul's Cathedral for the prince's recovery from typhoid. Then I went into the Old Bank of England, which is now a pub. The building was constructed in 1886 by Sir Arthur Blomfield in magnificent Italian style. The interior impresses with high ceilings, intricate plasterwork, magnificent chandeliers, and frescoes depicting finance and legislation. The building served as a Bank of England branch for legal affairs from 1888 to 1975, after which it was renovated and converted into a pub in 1994. This is one of the most luxurious ceilings you can see in London pubs.
And on my way, I encountered Temple Church. This is a very old church. It was consecrated in 1185, and it has a very rare form, round, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. The Knights Templar used it for their purposes from the 12th century. It served as the king's treasury, and these treasures were kept by the Templars. In 1215, Knight William Marshall held a meeting in this church between John Lackland and the barons, where their grievances and demands were discussed, as well as all questions about the Charter of Liberties.
Inside the temple are beautiful columns of Purbeck marble and 9 tombs of knights, including William Marshall, who was called the best knight who ever lived. It is calculated that he participated in and was successful in more than 500 duels. He served 5 English kings, from Henry II to his grandson Henry III, and his loyalty was legendary even in an era of betrayals and intrigues. The interior of this church was shown in the film The Da Vinci Code. Unfortunately, it was closed when I approached it, and it's completely unclear why. So I admired it only from the outside. It's definitely worth going inside. Further along my route were churches and a cathedral built by Christopher Wren. This amazing man was not an architect by training. He was a physicist, mathematician, astronomer, and inventor. A professor of geometry at Oxford, he studied planetary motion and designed telescopes. After the fire of 1666, when almost all of London burned, 87 churches and more than 13,000 houses were destroyed in 4 days. Wren undertook the most ambitious project in the city's history. Within 1 week after the fire, he presented King Charles II with a grandiose plan to rebuild all of London, with wide boulevards, squares, and baroque churches. Although the full plan was not implemented, Wren was commissioned to restore 51 churches and the magnificent St Paul's Cathedral. During World War II, many of his churches were destroyed. Now 24 of his churches have been restored. They are considered a national treasure. Wren is unique in that, being an excellent physicist, mathematician, and geometer, he expressed the harmony of calculations in architecture. He managed to adapt baroque for England, designed unique domes. The dome of St. Paul's became completely revolutionary for England, like Brunelleschi's dome for Florence. He devoted a lot of time and effort to the practicality and stability of buildings, their functionality. His genius lay in combining scientific precision with artistic vision. This is St. Paul's Cathedral. This is one of the most iconic structures in Great Britain. The cathedral is distinguished by its severity and monumentality, but at the same time possesses exquisite detail. It was built by Christopher Wren in 1675-1708. Before this, there had already been 4 churches on this very site, but all were destroyed by fires and wars. When Sir Christopher Wren was clearing the site of the ruins of the old cathedral destroyed by the Great Fire, he needed a marker stone for the center of the future building. A worker brought him the nearest fragment. When Wren turned the stone over, he discovered an inscription with a single word, Resurgam, Latin for I shall rise again. Today on the south facade of the cathedral, you can see a stone relief of a phoenix rising from flames, with the same inscription, Resurgam. In this cathedral, Wren amazingly managed to combine elements of English Gothic, Baroque, and Classicism. His dome, inspired by the Dome of St. Peter's in Rome, is one of the highest in the world and is visible from practically everywhere in London. The cathedral's dome is a true engineering marvel and architectural trick. What appears to be a single vault actually consists of 3 shells. An inner dome for the beauty of the interior, a structural brick cone to support the lantern at the top of the dome, and an outer one for the magnificent silhouette. This engineering trick allowed the creation of an illusion of perfect proportions both inside and out. Beneath your feet, inside the cathedral, is Europe's largest crypt, where Nelson, Wellington, Wren himself, and other national heroes rest. On the simple black marble slab on Christopher Wren's grave is carved the Latin epitaph, Si monumentum requiris, circumspice. If you seek his monument, look around. To enter St. Paul's Cathedral is to step into an architectural symphony where every note is carved from stone, written in light and gilded with dreams. Christopher Wren created not just a church, but a theater of the divine, where every element of the interior plays its role in the grandiose spectacle of faith. Crossing the threshold through the great west door, 9 meters high, the gaze instantly rushes along the central nave to the heart of the cathedral, the dome. This 158-meter perspective was conceived by Wren as a visual road to heaven, where each step brings you closer to the divine. Under the dome is the entrance to a staircase of 257 steps. There is no elevator, but if you climb up, an architectural marvel will open before you, the Whispering Gallery. Words spoken in a whisper at one wall can be clearly heard on the opposite side at a distance of 34 meters. Wren, mathematician and physicist, embedded the laws of acoustics in stone. If Wren created the architectural shell, then William Blake Richmond at the end of the 19th century filled it with a dazzling soul. The eastern part of the cathedral explodes with millions of golden and colored mosaic pieces. The ceilings depict divine creation in 3 vaults, the creation of beasts, fish, and birds. In the central dome, Richmond masterfully showed a turbulent sea populated by graceful and terrifying fish. He was especially proud of this work, the great organ of 1695 in a carved case by Grinling Gibbons. The interior of St Paul's Cathedral is not a museum, but a living organism that continues to evolve. In 2022, the video installation Martyrs by Bill Viola was included here for the first time. Every element of the interior, from mosaic angels to whispering walls, tells a story of how architecture can become a language in which man speaks with eternity. In this stone cosmos of Wren, physics becomes metaphysics and mathematics becomes prayer. This is St Bride's Church on Fleet Street. It was named after the Irish nun Brigid. This is Wren's tallest church. Its spire in height is second only to St Paul's Cathedral. Notice its spire. Does it remind you of anything? I'll tell you a true story. Young baker William Rich fell in love with his master's daughter. When it came time for the wedding at St Bride's, St Brigid's Church, he wanted to create a special cake. Looking at the tiered spire of the church, he invented what the whole world now knows, the multi-tiered wedding cake. But most importantly, this church is known as the Journalist's Church. The first English printer, William Caxton, who introduced printing to England, set up his first printing press in Westminster around 1476. And in 1500, the great Caxton's apprentice, Wynkyn de Worde, brought his printing press right into the courtyard of this church. Since the clergy was the most literate class of society and the most likely buyers of printed books, de Worde established his printing business where his main customers lived, in the Fleet Street area between London and Westminster. And it is believed that English journalism was born right here. Today in the north aisle of the church burns an eternal candle on the journalist's altar. It remembers those who died performing their duty, from war correspondents to local reporters, photographs of hostages, missing reporters, memorial plaques. All this reminds us of the price of truth. Marie Colvin, who died in Syria, John McCarthy, who spent 5 years as a hostage in Lebanon, for whom prayers were said in these walls every night, hundreds of other names.
And a bit about Fleet Street. This is the historic street of British press, and is named after the river that once flowed here. The first printing houses appeared on this street in the 16th century. This busy thoroughfare connected the City of London, centre of trade and commerce, and the City of Westminster, centre of government. An attentive ear could catch many gossips and news on the sidewalk and in the pubs. This access led to the birth of daily newspapers. By the 1730s, 31 newspapers were printed on Fleet Street. By the 20th century, all national newspapers had their offices here. In the 1980s, most publishers moved to other areas, but the name of this street is still associated with British journalism.
This is St Mary le Church. It is famous for its bells and tall spire. It is believed that a true Cockney is a person born within hearing distance of its bells. Considered the second most important church in the City of London, it has the third highest spire in London. Wren took as his basis the building of the Basilica of Maxentius in Rome, which he had never seen with his own eyes, and the entrances were copied from the Hôtel de Conti in Paris. Despite the fact that Wren never saw Rome with his own eyes, he was exceptionally well educated in classical architecture. Wren is a perfect example of how an outstanding mind can create masterpieces based on study and imagination, even without the opportunity to see the original sources firsthand. Costing more than 15,000, this was his second most expensive church after St. Paul's Cathedral. The high cost of St Mary le was explained by its exceptional importance as the second church of the city, Wren's ambitious architectural design with moving the tower to a prominent place on Cheapside, the use of expensive materials and complex engineering solutions. The modern church we see today is Christopher Wren's work, although the Norman crypt with its famous arches has been preserved from the 11th century. St. Stephen Walbrook is one of the most outstanding churches in the city of London, designed by Christopher Wren and built between 1672-1679 after the Great Fire of London. It is considered an architectural masterpiece and is often called a rehearsal for St. Paul's Cathedral. Wren experimented here with a central dome, which he later applied on a more grandiose scale in St. Paul's Cathedral. Externally, the building is quite modest, with a tower characteristic of Wren, but the interior space strikes with its harmony and innovation. The main feature of the interior is the central dome, supported by 8 columns and arches. The dome seems to float above the space, creating a sense of lightness and grandeur. The interior is decorated with elegant wood carving executed by masters of the Grinling-Gibbons school. Wooden panels, church pews, and pulpit all demonstrate the highest craftsmanship of 17th century carvers. The circular altar was created by Henry Moore between 1972-1983 from polished travertine marble, the same marble and from the same quarry that Michelangelo used. The altar is 8 feet in diameter and weighs several tons. This was Moore's only major religious work for a church, besides the Madonna and Child for St. Matthew's in Northampton. Henry Moore is undoubtedly the greatest English sculptor of the 20th century. Then I came to St Mary Aldermary. It is very Gothic, which is uncharacteristic for Wren. And here's why. This church was special, and it's all because of one stubborn woman. Mrs. Rogers, widow of wealthy Somerset merchant Henry Rogers, sat opposite the architect in her black mourning dress. Her late husband had left a huge fortune of $5,000 for the restoration of a church in London where it is most needed. The sum was colossal, more than many estates cost. "Sir Christopher," she said in a firm voice, "my husband's money will go to St. Mary Aldermary, but there is one condition." Wren raised an eyebrow. He was used to clients' whims, but what could this elderly lady want? "The church must be restored exactly as it was before the fire. Every arch, every detail. Henry prayed in a Gothic church, and I will not allow his memory to be desecrated by these newfangled Roman trinkets." Wren felt his jaw clench. Gothic! These medieval stone heaps that he considered barbaric. He had spent years studying Roman architecture, admired Palladio, dreamed of perfect proportions. "Madam," he began diplomatically, "the Gothic style is outdated. Modern architecture requires—" "No modern architecture," Mrs. Rogers cut him off sharply. "Either Gothic or find money elsewhere." And she stood up, preparing to leave. Wren quickly calculated in his mind. $5,000. That would be enough for a luxurious classical church. But without this money, the parish of St. Mary Aldermary would have to wait years, possibly decades. "Vrywelle," he said through gritted teeth. "It will be Gothic." Months later, Wren stood in the church under construction, watching Master Henry Dogood create an incredible fan vault from plaster. Despite his resistance to the Gothic style, the architect could not help but admire. He had managed to create something unique, the only parish church in England with a fan vault worthy of a cathedral. "Sir Christopher," his assistant called to him. How do we explain to people why you're building in Gothic style? Wren smiled. Tell them I had an obligation to deviate from the better style. When the church was completed in 1682, even stern critics acknowledged its magnificence. Slender pillars, slightly pointed arches, magnificent fan vault, all this created a sense of divine grandeur. But the church's life was not easy. In 1703, the Great Storm brought down the tower. In 1876, the Victorians heavy-handedly redesigned the interior. In 1940, German bombs knocked out all the stained glass. But the church survived, and Duguid's fan vault still makes visitors freeze in admiration. Today, St Mary Aldermary is a cozy cafe on weekdays and a place for meditation in the evenings. Here you can drink coffee under Wren's Gothic arches or pray in the silence of ancient walls. Then I reached the place where the Great Fire began and where an obelisk now stands. During this fire, 72,000 people were left homeless. This was practically the entire population of central London at the time. On September 2nd, 1666, around 1 o'clock in the morning, a fire started in the bakery of Thomas Fariner, the royal baker on Pudding Lane. The bakery was only 202 feet from where the monument stands today. The Fariner family, he himself, his son and daughter, escaped by climbing through the upper floor window onto the roof of a neighboring house. But their maid refused to follow them, fearing to fall to the street, and became the first victim of the Great Fire. London at that time was a wooden city. Houses were built of timber with thatched roofs and stood so close to each other that on the upper floors neighbors could shake hands. After a long, hot and dry summer, there was drought, and the east wind turned the flames into a real hell. Pitch, ropes, oil, and brandy were stored on Pudding Lane, which easily caught fire. Lord Mayor Thomas Bloodworth inspected the fire shortly after it started, but deciding it was not serious, returned to sleep. Later, people begged him to allow houses to be demolished, but he feared financial responsibility for illegal demolition. Well, everything as usual. There was no fire service. Each parish had water buckets and hooks for demolishing buildings. Some had simple fire extinguishers that worked like large syringes. King Charles II himself helped fight the fire, distributed money to convince people to fight the flames. The main author of the monument was Sir Christopher Wren, but he worked in collaboration with Dr. Robert Hooke. Wren controlled the final design of this impressive monument. The monument has an internal spiral staircase of 300 steps leading to an observation platform. In the very heart of the City of London, among glass towers and the noise of stock deals, there is an amazing place where time has stopped. The ruins of St Dunstan-in-the-East church, overgrown with jasmine and hawthorn, where tame squirrels beg for nuts from office clerks during lunch break. But who was that saint whose name this church bore for more than 9 centuries? England, 10th century. Young monk Dunstan works in the smithy at Glastonbury Abbey. The hammer in his hands creates not only horseshoes and nails, but also elegant church decorations. He is a skilled goldsmith, artist, and musician in one. His life was full of trials. In his youth, he was accused of witchcraft at the king's court. He had learned too many talents from Irish monks. He was beaten, thrown into a cesspit, exiled. Then a disease similar to leprosy covered his body with tumors. A sign from above, decided Dunstan, and took monastic vows. According to the most popular legend, the devil came to Dunstan, who was working as a blacksmith, and asked him to shoe his hooves. Dunstan nailed a horseshoe to the devil's hoof, causing him great pain. Dunstan agreed to remove the horseshoe and free the devil only after he promised never to enter a place where a horseshoe hangs over the door. This is considered the origin of the lucky horseshoe tradition. Dunstan lived a long life, became Archbishop of Canterbury, crowned kings, reformed the church, and in 1100, a century after his death, a church was built in his honor halfway between London Bridge and the Tower. The church survived the Great Fire, received a new spire from Christopher Wren himself, but it did not survive the Blitz of 1941, one German bomb on the night of May 10th, and only ruins and Wren's spire looking at the sky remained of the ancient walls. After the war, they decided not to rebuild. Let it remain as it is, a monument to both courage and the fragility of human creations. Today, in the ruins of St Dunstan-in-the-East, palm trees rustle, jasmine blooms, and hawthorn covers the Gothic arches with a pink cloud, a small paradise in the stone jungle of the city. Office workers come here with sandwiches during lunch break, lovers arrange dates under the shadow of ruins, tourists take selfies among ivy and stone carving, and squirrels live here, the most brazen squirrels in London. They meet visitors at the entrance, stand on their hind legs and demand something tasty. They grab nuts right from hands, climb into pockets, climb onto shoulders. And the spirit of St Dunstan probably smiles. The same monk who defeated the devil now watches as his ancient church has become home to the most harmless and charming creatures in the world. Who said that holiness must be grim? Sometimes it simply comes in the form of a tame squirrel that trustingly takes a nut from your hands in the shadow of Gothic arches, where people once prayed for the salvation of their souls. And the final point of the route, Leadenhall Market. Built in 1881 on the site of a 14th century market, it strikes with elegant cast iron arches, glass roof, and mosaic floors. Architect Horace Jones created a true palace for merchants. The market starred in the Harry Potter films as Diagon Alley, that very street where Harry first entered the wizarding world. Many visitors still look for the entrance to the leaky cauldron here. Once meat and poultry were traded here, today it's a paradise for gourmets, exquisite cheeses, wines, delicacies, and cozy pubs. Especially famous is the Lamb Tavern, a pub where London bankers have been washing down their stress with ale for 150 years. Every day, thousands of bankers, brokers, and financiers in $5,000 suits come here to buy a $10 sandwich. After particularly stressful trading days, traders come to the market for oysters and champagne, a tradition that is already 150 years old. In Victorian times, oysters were poor people's food. Today, they are a symbol of success. The market is located in the very center of the City of London, surrounded by bank skyscrapers. When in 1881 architect Horace Jones was creating his elegant cast iron arches and glass roof, he didn't know he was creating the only historic oasis in the future forest of skyscrapers. Today the market looks like a precious stone in the crown of the modern city. Speaking of the city, did you know that it is a separate administrative unit with its own Lord Mayor, its own police, and even the right to mint coins? The city has a representative in Parliament, and the Queen must ask permission to enter the city. 108 ancient guilds still operate in the city, including the Goldsmiths Company, which still checks the purity of precious metals for all of Britain. Leadenhall is a place where Victorian elegance meets modern life. This entire route from Piccadilly is 22,000 steps. If you repeat it, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Good luck.